So I think we have to balance that, but understand what happened. And now is the time really, I think, for this exchange to intensify. And I think it's very encouraging that there are, for instance, films now or TV series like this Weissensee, for instance, which are working through that past. It's not just a question of people looking at their files, their Stasi files, which is important, but it's good that this is coming in and we're seeing mainstream media also dealing with this. And the anniversary, 30 years, makes sense to do that at this time.
Yeah, as important as the Stasi was to East Germany and forming sort of a kind of an underlying culture that everybody had to be aware of, I think, yeah, if we could do something to bring that past a little bit more clearly, is maybe just to work harder to get a clearer picture of what just day-to-day life was like in the East.
Yeah.
You know, I never had direct, I had lots of indirect, I imagine. I never had direct any kind of encounter with the Stasi, and I was American. I mean, almost nobody believes me when I tell them that. I'm sure they had their eyes on me on, you know, here and there, especially since I did music later with some bands that certainly were under surveillance. They were the alternative bands. And that's why I have requested my Stasi file, because I want to understand that band time better, the time I sang in. But that really wasn't day-to-day life. There really was a strong group of people working together, and it was a country where there was enough of everything, but certainly never more than enough. And so you had to think carefully about how to share your resources, and it was all carefully thought out and discussed and generously given to others. You know, that was my experience there.
Oh.
If I could, that would be what I would try to understand a little bit better about what happened during that time, because I think that's kind of disappeared. You know?
Yes, yeah. I think it's very important that when people make these films and so forth, that they involve people who have a background from the East, not that you're imposing some sort of prefabricated idea of what it was like. This oversimplified police state or something doesn't get you very far. And I think I take your point with the everyday life. I think that's very, very important to think, what did it mean to actually live there as a normal person, and to appreciate some of the positives about that too. The couple I met in Köpenick, they were actually, I'd sort of assumed that they would think that the West was better and that they would like to live there, but actually they said to me, we don't like this sort of hyper consumerism that we hear about, you know. And at that time, we're going back then to this 1977, Berlin was very hyped up consumer place, actually, pumped up by the West and by the Allies to be this sort of shop window. And it was a little bit like I took their point, and I'm sort of in mixed feelings about what happened to historical buildings. On the one hand, there wasn't the resources to restore them and neglect them. On the other hand, there was a sort of authenticity about things because they weren't sort of over-restored or made into some sort of Disneyland, which happened in some West German towns where it looked so new and was so overdone that it didn't look historic. There was more this feeling of history there, I think, that you had in many places. But the negative side, of course, is that some buildings then collapsed and they didn't exist anymore. But I think now we're in
the amazing collapsible city, right?
Yeah, and were also, of course, abominations like some of these flats and things. But some of the ideas were interesting. I think the idea in East Berlin, of course, to have normal people's flats basically in the center of the town. That was quite a revolutionary idea. Not just saying like you have in many towns where if I go to the city of London, it's completely dead at nighttime because it's just office space. You know, why shouldn't people live in the center of a town? Yeah.